Here and Now, the program featuring the news and interests of the African American community. Here's your host, Sandra Bookman.
Coming up, about 60,000 New York City adults are diagnosed with diabetes each year, and the disease is most prevalent in the Bronx. Borough President Vanessa Gibson is among those now calling on the city to declare a diabetes health emergency. Also ahead, nearly 10,000 structures were destroyed in the Eaton fire in Los Angeles County in Southern California. One of the hardest hit areas was the historic African American community of Altadena. From mental health services to youth programs, the center in New York City is a critical lifeline for the LGBTQ plus community. And you may not look your age or even act your age, but there's no way around it. In a new book, Eat Your Age, Feel Younger, Be Happier, Live Longer. New York Times best-selling author, Dr. Ian Smith. And later, the signature dance series, E-Moves Festival, A Movement, is in full bloom for the Harlem Stage spring season. That's all ahead on Here and Now. About 60,000 New York City adults are diagnosed with diabetes each year, and the disease is most prevalent in the Bronx. The Bronx is also home to the 4 neighborhoods with the highest blood sugar levels in the city among people who are diabetic. Now, those findings presented recently at a diabetes summit. Borough President Vanessa Gibson is among those now calling on the city to declare a diabetes health emergency. Joining us now, Bronx Borough President Vanessa L. Gibson. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk with us.
Thank you for having me today. Really appreciate the time.
Diabetes emergency. Why do you believe the time for that is now?
I believe it's a call to action and attention because the Bronx has led the city when it comes to diabetes, when it comes to residents who are pre-diabetic, as well as we represent some of the highest rates of amputations. And we want to make sure that we focus on education and outreach and really making sure that we respond in a very intentional way. We just held a Diabetes Action Summit in partnership with Health and Hospitals and Bronx Care and our Health and Human Services team. And we are really focused intentionally on education, on health care, access, wraparound services, patient-centered care. We really want to prevent diabetes and tackle it from the front end and not the back end. We know it's also associated with decent and stable housing. It's also associated with food access to healthy food. And so we've been looking at this in multiple angles, and we believe that the city of New York must take a proactive approach and really prioritize diabetes prevention, develop a task force like we are, and really bring together healthcare professionals, advocates, FQHCs, those who are most affected by diabetes every day. And let's come up with a series of action steps that include resources and programs in a real way so that we can reach residents where they are and prevent diabetes.
Now, that summit brought together a lot of the stakeholders in the Bronx. Why are we seeing such high rates of diabetes in the Bronx?
I think a lot of it has to do with the social determinants of health. You know that for quite a while, the Bronx has been number 62 of all 62 counties in the state when it comes to healthy outcomes. We have some of the highest rates of asthma, heart disease, kidney failure, renal failure, high blood pressure. And guess what? It's all preventable. We have the answers. We want to make sure we focus on equity and justice when it comes to food access, when it comes to produce and healthy food choices. We want to make sure that we focus on programs that invest in families, that give access and opportunity to quality health care. We have been working so hard on the Not 62 campaign for a healthier Bronx. We've been very intentional working with Charmaine Ruddock at Bronx Health Reach, the Institute for Family Planning, and also many organizations that come out of my office like Bronx Health Link, supporting families, supporting children, supporting older adults. This is work that we do all year round. And I think when you look at some of the factors we face in the Bronx with asthma, with truck traffic, with carbon emissions, we have high asthma rates. When you look at poverty, people living in squalid, substandard housing, that's also attributed to this as well. And, you know, we've looked very intentionally by community boards. And so we know where we have the highest rates. We have to go into those community boards, look at what services are there, who are the trusted neighbors, who are the validators, who are the partners in this work. And we have to make sure that we invest with our time, our money, our energy, and our labor, because we have to have conversations, but we also need an action plan to follow that.
You just listed some of the health partners you have in this. I know one of the other partners that you have in terms of getting the word out to people and trying to get them to see how it's important for them to take control of their own health. Dr. Dre, hip-hop pioneer Dr. Dre, who had his own fight with diabetes, in fact, lost his sight. We've spoken to him before about, and not only lost his sight, but lost a limb
Yes.
about diabetes. How important is it to have that voice in this fight to demonstrate to people why it's so important that they do what they need to do to take their health in their own hands?
I want to thank Dr. Dre for stepping up and becoming an advocate and turning his pain into purpose, because he really represents the population that we want to talk about. Communities of color, immigrant communities, those that are low income, working class families that don't have access to good food. Unfortunately, we live in a time when affordable food and healthy food is not always accessible to everyone. And so we struggle with that. Dr. Dre was at our Diabetes Action Summit. He gave a powerful testimony of his story, and hopefully his story encourages others to take ownership of their health when it comes to dieting, when it comes to health management, when it comes to health and wellness, more walking, more bike riding, encouraging, walking and physical activity is important. We have Wellness Wednesdays in our office where we walk up and down the steps at Borough Hall with staff, because we want to make sure that we're doing more. Access to healthy food is important, but I also think that when you talk about the challenges we face, the people who are closest to the challenge are usually closest to the solution. And we want to be very community driven and solutions based. This has been going on for a long time, and the numbers keep going up and up and up. And we don't want people to live like this when we can do better. We owe it to the residents of our county when it comes to diabetes, those who are pre-diabetic as well. Another struggle. I was pre-diabetic myself until I changed my eating and my diet differently. And we have to, again, take this very personal. We're talking about people in our communities, people of color, older adults. My mom had diabetes type 2 for 20 years, and it was affected by kidney failure, renal failure. This is real, and it's very personal to me. So I want to use the story of my mom as a story of strength to encourage others to take ownership of their health and wellness and make sure that we're doing this work together.
Do you get the sense that the city is listening this time around?
I believe so. I believe we sounded the alarm. I want to recognize this New York City Council member, the health chair, Lynn Schulman, who really had a powerful hearing, the Committee on Health, and talked about this work. We passed legislation to look at a diabetes study. The Department of Health is coming out with more regulations and more information, brochures and pamphlets in multiple languages. Education is the key. If you know better, you do better. And we want to make sure that we're talking about this work. Mayor Adams often says health is wealth and wealth is health. And we can and we should do better as residents of the borough, as residents of the city. And we're calling on the Adams administration in the FY26 budget to really dedicate money and resources to diabetes prevention.
You are the borough president that never stops. Before I go, I want to ask you about one other initiative that you have been working on in terms of security upgrades at some housing in your in the borough. Talk to me a little bit about some of your recent moves.
So we've been very intentional in looking at public safety from multiple angles, not just the presence of NYPD, school safety, law enforcement in general, but lighting. Security cameras are important. So we've been working with NYPD. We made an allocation last year, $400,000. This year, we're going to add an additional and add more money for security cameras across the Bronx, all 12 precincts. We're working with PSA, housing, our NYCHA, public housing developments also need attention. So we recently made a designation of $300,000 to 1100 Teller Avenue in the Claremont Consolidated Development. President Elsie Deans and her team. And, we're not afraid to make these decisions. We're not afraid to go into the communities and talk about what keeps people safe, because we can say we're the safest, largest city in the world, but it means nothing if you're a victim of a crime, if your child was a victim of a crime, your parent or anyone. If you don't feel safe on our streets, that means our work must continue. So we're not going to stop. Public safety is important to everyone in our city, no matter where you live, how much is in your bank account. It doesn't matter. Everyone has a fundamental expectation to be safe in their communities. I am happy with what we've been able to do in 3 years, $94 million across the borough in capital investments, $50 million of that in public schools across our borough with technology and upgrades in many of our buildings, tech equity, economic development, job growth. We have an initiative called Future Forward Bronx with the Department of Labor, where we are connecting young people and applicants to jobs, emerging industries. We're going to open the first ever Bronx STEAM school in our borough in September. We're reimagining the Kingsbridge Armory. We have a $3.2 billion investment to expand Metro North across the East Bronx and Co-op City, Hunts Point, Morris Park, and Parkchester. We are looking at Orchard Beach, a $100 million investment, the work in the South Bronx at the Hunts Point Food Distribution Center. We're not done. The Bronx will strive and thrive in 25, and the Bronx means business when it comes to economic development and generational wealth. We have to support small businesses and entrepreneurs and MWBEs and many of our small business owners who are struggling today. The Bronx has been left behind for too long, and we are not going to stand by and let the Bronx lead in everything challenging when we can lead in everything good. Only the very best for the residents of our borough.
Bronx Borough President Vanessa L. Gibson. I'm going to send folks to bronxbp.nyc.gov to take a look at all that you've done already and the work that you've laid out for yourself and your borough in the years to come. Thank you so much for talking with us, and keep us posted.
Absolutely. Happy Bronx Week.
All right. Thank you. We'll be right back. Nearly 10,000 structures were destroyed in the Eaton fire in Los Angeles County in Southern California. One of the hardest hit areas was the historic African-American community of Altadena. So many businesses, so many homes, so many lives destroyed. What does the future look like in a place that was once the state's first black middle-class community? It's now a charred shell of itself. The 5-part limited podcast series To Altadena with Love blends history and the first-hand stories of survivors. Joining us today is the creator and host of this series, Mimi Brown. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
I can't imagine that there was a person in the country watching those homes, these lives burn, that wasn't impacted, didn't feel something, whether it was just dismay, sorrow for these folks that lost everything. But the story of Altadena, I know, really hit African Americans hard, the history of this community. Talk to me about what inspired you to put together this podcast series.
Sure. You know, I, as a journalist, I went to Altadena like everyone else. I wanted to capture the story. But when I went there, I realized this is more than just a story. These are many stories. And so when I got there and I realized the devastation, the sheer impact, I started, just talking to residents, trying to figure out what this looked like before the fires. And what I learned is this was a rich community full with life and community, a place where everyone knows everyone. And I wanted to dig a little deeper, and we uncover so many things. Like in episode 2, we talk about how most Black people got to Altadena during the 1960s, was during redlining, the Great Migration. And they were redlined to West Altadena, which is a part of town, and whites were on the east side of town. And so we explored all of that. And so when I got there and I learned that they were turned away, and there was one real estate agent who said, you know what, I'm going to help all of you guys find a place to live. I wanted to dig deeper and find out what that looked like.
Because you felt like you wanted people to understand all that had been lost.
Yes, because I feel like, when you can humanize a story, when you can make other people understand that this could be my grandfather, this could be my grandmother, because most of Altadena, whether we know it or not, 65% were elderly community. And so these are multi-generational homes that were lost. These were homes that were passed down to family members and generations. And so when you can say, when there's an 80-year-old woman who now has no place to go, whose 6 family members lived in this entire house and now they have no place to go. I wanted to tell those stories, but I wanted to do it through their own storytelling, like through their lens. I didn't want to tell it for them. I wanted them to tell it. And so that's what this story does. It allows them to tell their own story, and it allows you to get a little piece of Altadena before the fires, before the destruction.
Yeah, when they talked about their lives. I mean, we have these conversations about building generational wealth, and for many of us in this country, that wealth is really grounded, and a lot of times by the homes and the property we own.
Yeah.
And well, the land is still there, but they've lost possessions. They've lost these homes that you've said have been passed down.
Yeah.
So they're in a sense starting from scratch.
And what we're learning from that is that a lot of people were house rich.
Yeah.
And so they bought their house in 1960 for $33,000. In episode 2, we talked to Robert Childs. He bought his home in 1967 for $33,000. It was worth $2.1 million when it burned down. And now fighting with the insurance company to get what it's worth is very different than it would look like, had it not appreciated to the value that it's at right now. And so they're dealing with all of that right now.
And then when you started talking to folks, I mean, these are folks that are really in shock. They're probably sad, angry, all of their emotions. How willing and open, did you have to convince folks to talk with you?
No. When I went to Altadena, they wanted to talk to me. They wanted to share their story because this is a community that I have never seen anything like this before. They are resilient. They said, you know what, no matter that this happened to us, we are going to rebuild, and we are a community and we're sticking together and we're going to protect our elderly. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to keep outsiders from coming in and building Altadena into something that it doesn't look like. It is a town that it still has a small town feel, and predatory buyers are coming in and they're buying up property, and they want to make sure that they can hold Dena, is what they're calling it, to make sure that it still looks like what it looked like before the fires. History has shown us when there's natural disasters like Katrina or Black Wall Street in Oklahoma, they don't come back the way that they started. And so this community is rallying behind each other. They're holding benefit concerts, they're raising money, and they're trying to make sure that they hold each other accountable, but also hold outsiders accountable for not buying up the land and making it and changing it into something it doesn't look like.
Now, Altadena was really hit hard. I mean, it was essentially wiped out. Is there any thought about why it got hit so hard?
I think they're still going through that process. I think Southern California Edison is still there's this huge investigation on what actually sparked the fire. Altadena, again, that the west side of Altadena, where most of the African American population lived, was hit the hardest. And so I think there's some questions there. I think in episode 3 we talk about when the disparities, the alarms came through. The black side of town got the disparities at 3:35 in the morning. The white side of town got it the day before at 7:30. And so I think there's some disparities that they're going to go through and try and figure out what exactly happened during that fire and why some were notified and why others were not.
Yeah, and was some of that predicated on how the winds were blowing? All of that is part of the investigation.
I think all of that is part of the investigation, but when you listen to stories and you hear people say, at 4:45, I was walking through flames to get out of my home. I think the residents have a lot of questions about why they were not notified early enough, even though there's proof that 911 calls came in at midnight. And they still didn't get that
How have people reacted, not just the residents of Altadena, but other folks listening to these stories, hearing, about these rich family histories that are now just charred rubble? How are they reacting?
This has had a great reaction. I am honored that the world actually is listening to these stories. I've been able to humanize some, there was a Victor Shaw who went viral. He was holding his water hose when he passed away. He was trying to save his home.
Did he have a heart attack or?
No, he was trying to save his home and the flames came and he could not escape. But we talked to Willie Johnson in episode 1 who humanizes Victor Shaw. He tells us his father, Frank Shaw, loved his home, and so Victor wanted to protect that home, right? And so what it does is it changes 9,000 structures burned down. No, these 9,000 structures, they had a name. They had a family, they had a voice. And so being being able to humanize these tragedies for people, and it makes them care just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Makes them hold space for Altadena just a little bit more. I live in Los Angeles, and I did not know 20 minutes down the road was a historic Black community. I don't think that we gave it that much thought, and now that it's gone,
We took it for granted.
we took it for granted, and now that it's gone, we want to make sure that we do our part to help preserve what's left.
Is there any way that people can help?
If people want to help, we can go to toaltadinawithlove.com. There's also holddina.org that is raising money to help the community come back, and they're trying to give every resident a $350,000 seed fund to rebuild their home.
Yeah, and when you look at that, you said this man bought it for $33,000 all those years ago, now worth more than $2 million, fighting with insurance companies, and that is a story that is being repeated all over, not only Altadena, but the rest of Southern California as well.
Absolutely, because at the same time, there were fires going on everywhere. There's fires in Malibu, Palisades, and Altadena, and now with, tariffs and all things like that, they're going to have a harder time rebuilding. And so what we can do to help this community in any way possible, we want to make sure that we do it, because historically, again, we've known that certain communities don't get all the help that they need versus other communities. And so it's very important to hold Altadena and hold space for Altadena and help them.
Hold on to that legacy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mimi Brown, you're an Emmy-nominated journalist. You've done an excellent job.
Thank you.
And it's always nice to do what we all want to do in this profession, shed light on things that need to have a spotlight on them.
Yes.
To altadinawithlove.com. You can listen to the podcast series. And if you've got some money, you can donate to these families.
I think if you really want to help Altadena, you can go to heydina.org. You can donate. You can also make sure that you are just holding space and listening to their stories, spreading the word, making sure that this community is not forgotten. I think what happens is the news cameras come in and then they go out. And then we don't hear anything else about Altadena, and they're left, some people are left paying mortgages on top of their rent now, and so they're facing things that they've never faced before, and we want to just make sure that they are situated in such a way that after this is over, the rebuilding process may take 2 to 3 years. And
or more.
Just depending, right? And so after this is over, we just want to make sure that this community can rebuild the way it looked like before the fires.
As you said, hold Dina.
Yes, hold Dina.
Mimi Brown, thank you so much for shining a spotlight on this very, very important story.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
We'll be right back. According to the Child Mind Institute, gay youth are at a higher risk for mental health challenges like depression, anxiety, even attempting suicide. From mental health services to youth programs, the center in New York City is a critical lifeline for the LGBTQ+ community. Here to tell us more is CEO of the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Community Center, Dr. Carla Smith. It is great to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
You are always on the right side of everything, are you not?
Of course.
You're going to pat yourself on the back.
Give myself a little pat.
So we just talked a little bit about it off camera. These are interesting times we are living in. So it makes the work that you do at the center even that much more important.
Yeah, the center has been around for 40 years, and the value of the space and the services that we provide is even more clear today, right? People coming into space, more and more people coming into space in crisis, afraid, really concerned just based on what we're hearing and experiencing. And so the center as a space, a community space, an advocacy space, a space where people can come in, be themselves, be accepted and loved on and supported is really important.
So, the idea of inclusivity, of, advocacy.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you've focused on since you took over here in terms of making that the center of what you do at the center?
Right. Well, the center has been really focused on being more and more inclusive, really focused on what we called centered communities or underserved communities, right? Communities of color, people who identify as part of the TGNC community, really working to make sure that services are available to those that are marginalized and not able to access services in the way. That's more important today than ever, right? And so it's been continuing that work, that focus, bringing resources to the center to make sure that we can continue to provide those services to the community.
You know, leading into this interview, I talked about the issues that LGBTQ plus youth are facing. Why is that population really so at risk?
Yeah, well, remember, we're talking about individuals who identify in multiple ways, and even ways today that were different from back in the day when I first came out, right? And so they need to have access to support services, right? And as you think about what's happening in the world today and what we're hearing, even though we're in a sanctuary city, New York, where we have access to more support, you're still impacted by what you hear, right? And kids are impacted by that. And parents are struggling on how to support their kids. And so places like the center are very important to be able to make sure that parents know that we're here for them and we're here for their kids, right? That there's a safe space to be able to talk about the multiple ways that kids are identifying that parents may not really understand. How do they support their children? And to be able to cope with the fear that comes out of hearing the constant onslaught of attacks, especially against kids who identify as part of the trans community, right? And so making sure that they know there's support for them here at the center, which is what we're doing.
And have you lost any funding or that you guys depend on to do the work that is so important?
Yes, like other organizations in our sector, we have lost some funding and we have other funding at risk. So recent notifications to us, same day notification, your funding is ending today, as many other organizations are experiencing. We have about $3 million on the line right now that we know is federal direct or pass-through funding that is at risk. I was just reading some things that came out today around crime victim funding that is at risk, and redirecting that funding away from DEI communities, right? And so that includes LGBT identified people. And so we are at risk of losing $3 million in total, which would have tremendous impact on our community, our ability to provide life-saving services.
So talk to me about some of those services that, not only services that you provide that make a difference in these lives, but also some of these services that you will struggle to be able to provide if you lose that money.
Yeah, well, HIV prevention, education, testing services are at risk, of course. We've heard around sort of efforts to and desires to reduce that funding. Mental health and substance use services are on the line. So being able to provide services to the kids we were talking about in terms of mental health support for kids who are in crisis. There's a crisis line. The crisis line is on the line, right? That funding is on the line. And so kids may not be able to call into that crisis line because they might not be able to get that support. That's not our funding, but that is funding that's on the line. Wellness services in general are services around crime victim services are at risk. So survivor support is at risk. So victims of domestic violence, hate violence would not be able to access support from the center if we lost that funding.
And are there some things that you guys are doing, knowing that this could be coming down the line, I guess, to try to secure funding from other areas, or, do what a lot of people have been forced to do these days? You just tell people, we need help. If you like what we're doing, we need your help. Yeah,
of course, we're doing all those things. So we're taking a sort of multi-pronged approach. We have really great partners in this space who are stepping up and stepping in and providing additional support. And we're asking them for support. We're talking to foundations around who may have given us restricted funding, who are unrestricting that funding and considering doing that so we can be more nimble if things change from the federal perspective. We're also out there talking about needing additional support, right? To make sure that in the event we lose more funding than we've lost now, we can gain access to that. We are also doing scenario planning. So in the event we lose this funding or this funding or this funding, what do we do? How do we reduce services if we need to, or figure out how we can supplement those costs with other resources?
Yeah, you talked in a general way about the services that you provide. I know that you have an insurance enrollment service. You've got wellness services. Talk to me about the Youth Drop-In Center, Connect and Chill.
Connect and chill, be in community, be with other people who identify like you or differently, to have conversations. learn from one another. They can access our Economic Empowerment Center, get on the computers, look for jobs, look for colleges, get support. Some people come in with no place to go. They may need housing support, connecting them to entitlements, things that they may need in terms of services or insurance. Really great place. The drop-in center is amazing. I would love to have people stop by and see it because the kids are so wonderful and energetic and smart and committed to making sure that not just they have the ability to live the lives that they want to live, but that the people around them do too.
And I think what occurs to me is that the services they are receiving in your center are no different than the services if you were at another center that was addressing another population, and no less needed, deserved.
Yeah, these are not LGBT issues, but our identity impacts our ability to access resources, right? What we're seeing from what people are trying to do in terms of reducing our ability to do that. But these are human rights and human needs. And so we may provide services a little bit differently than places who are not serving our community, because we try to do that in a way that recognizes the intersecting way people identify. So we take those things into consideration. And when people come through the door, they see people who look like them, right? And they feel welcomed and safe. And it's done in a non-medical environment. So our mental health program, it's not in like a hospital or that type of sterile environment. Those are great places, right?
Yeah.
But it's in a different safe space that people are used to being in. So they feel comfortable being open and talking to each other and getting support.
And before I let you go, of course, Pride Month is coming up.
Yep.
Any things that you guys specifically have planned for Pride?
Yeah, well, every year we do a Juneteenth celebration in June, right? June is very busy for the center, right? And it's a great place. I encourage people to come out and come to the center. And you don't have to be part of the community, come to the center. The center is open to everybody, right? And so we do a Juneteenth celebration. We're gonna have a huge block party. We shut down the whole block. It's gonna be fabulous. We're doing a Cowboy Carter theme, I believe, this year. We also do a Pride pit stop on Pride Day. We're marching in the parade. We're in each of the boroughs, tabling, giving out information, making sure people know that we're here and they can access resources and support. So a lot of stuff happening. We're really excited, and I can't wait to celebrate Pride. It's an important time for us to do that.
And get people activated to support the work that you guys do, because it is so important. Gaycenter.org. You can find out information about the activities planned for Pride Month and for the services that are always there. And if you got some money that you can spare, donate it.
Feel free to send it over. We need support in order to continue to do this work. It's really important. These are human rights issues. And people deserve access to care.
All right. Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Carla Smith.
Thank you, Sandra.
We'll be right back. You may not look your age or even act your age, but there's no way around it. We are all aging. And while getting old may be inevitable, feeling old is not. That is the message in a new book, Eat Your Age, Feel Younger, Be Happier, Live Longer. And it includes a 30-day customized meal plan for each decade of your life. Here to tell us more is New York Times best-selling author, Dr. Ian Smith. It's great to see you again.
In person?
Yes,
Love that,
in person.
Right? It's good to see you.
And I tell you, when you come, I always feel guilty about my love of Captain Crunch.
You should.
But I don't buy it.
Listen, I tell you all the time, when you're around me, never feel guilty, because I eat almost everything, and I believe in doing things in moderation, and you have to live a little in life. So don't take yourself too seriously.
I'm looking at the size of your thighs. You're not eating almost everything.
That's called the gym, by the way. That's the gym.
All right. I feel even guiltier now. Ian, you've written so many books about health and eating, and it's always excellent advice. This one was really interesting to me because you're telling us there are certain ways we can eat in each decade, or likely should be eating in each decade of our lives, to address, I guess, future issues and overall health.
Yeah, the book starts in the 30s, that decade, and goes to 60s plus. And the idea behind it is that every decade presents different challenges for us from a medical standpoint, a health standpoint. And food really is that medicine. And so you can actually curtail your food to prevent illness and to actually treat illness. And so what I wanted to do was to give people a real deep dive of, for each decade, these are the top 10 diseases you should be concerned about. These are the symptoms. This is what you should know is coming. And then here are some foods that can help you. Here are some exercises that can help you. Oh, and here's some tests you should take. So it really gives people a nice broad array of how to improve their overall wellness per decade of their life.
And what you're saying is this really does bolster you when it comes to the aging process.
Yeah, you know, aging is inevitable. I mean, the body ages. It's like a car. The car ages, but some people have nice old cars. And the reason why those cars are nice at an older age is because they've taken care of it.
Yeah.
You know, they've changed the oil, they've checked the engine, they've done the services, changed the tires, rotate them. We have to do that to our body. We have to allow ourselves the ability to age, but also to lubricate ourselves, and we don't do that. And so this book says to people, getting old does not mean that you can't exercise, that you can't enjoy things you enjoyed in the past. It means you need to be smart about how you preserve your body and also how you apply your body. Some exercises you're doing in your 30s, probably not great for you in your 60s, but you still need to exercise just a little differently.
Yeah, that was a great analogy. It actually was. I think I'm not lubricating myself with the right things.
That's right.
Probably.
That's right.
So let's talk about the different decades. I'm going to start with the fantasy because I want to go back to being 30. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So what should you be eating in your 30s?
Well, 30s is a foundational decade, right? And so you're really setting yourself up. When I talk about 30s, the first thing I think about is calcium. It's so important to build your bone stock. Men and women, by the way. Men suffer from osteoporosis or osteopenia. Those are bone-thinning illnesses. So lots of calcium when you're young can build nice, strong bones. And people don't eat enough calcium, things like dairy and even non-dairy products like broccoli. So in the book, I give you what are the top 10 nutrients per your decade. Then I tell you where to find those nutrients. So if you have calcium, this is a list of food sources for calcium. And I think that's what people need to go through. Also, iron's important. A lot of young people develop what's called iron deficiency anemia.
Yeah.
And iron's important because it establishes the protein in our blood called hemoglobin, which carries the oxygen. So if you don't have enough iron, you decrease your oxygen carrying capacity in your blood, and then you have problems breathing, you have anemia. And so iron is also a big thing. And so when I look, there are other things obviously in your 30s, but when I think about my 30s, I think about iron and calcium and building yourself up from there.
So let's skip to the 50s.
Yeah, that's my decade.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of it. So the 50s really is about understanding that your gastrointestinal system is slowing down, number one. People talk about constipation. The GI, the gastrointestinal tract, its mobility, how it moves. When your GI tract moves properly, then you have normal kind of habits. When it doesn't move well, then your habits slow down and becomes difficult. So fiber is important. Fiber keeps you regular. It's very important. Most Americans are consuming about 1/3 of the amount of fiber that they actually need. It's really problematic. And so that's one thing. So fiber is a big thing. Also things like omega-3 fatty acids. They're heart healthy and they're brain healthy. And so in your 50s, you want to start thinking about heart disease, and omega-3s are great for that, very protective.
I want to say 60s, but now you're getting really close to home.
60s plus. Listen, the biggest thing I think for 60s is protein. Because people don't understand that muscular development as you age is important. Everyone thinks it's cardio. And cardio is good. Walking and riding a bicycle, those are nice things. But people have muscle atrophy, which means that their muscles thin. And the reason why we need muscles as we age is threefold. One, muscles increase our metabolism. So you want to, lose weight or maintain your weight, you got to keep your metabolism burning. That's what muscles do for you. Number two is balance. The reason why a lot of people, as they get older, fall is because they're off balance. Or when they go on uneven ground, they can't catch themselves like they normally could. That's because there's disparity in their muscles. Their muscles and their extremities are weak. And lastly, people have to understand with muscles is joint pain. People say, oh, my joints are aching. Well, joints tend to ache more when you aren't strong around your muscles aren't strong around the joint. So there are other things at that age, but protein to me is one of the most important things as we age because you have to keep developing muscles, and protein is the building block of muscle.
My producer is telling me that I left folks in the 40s. I was trying to give them something that they needed to read. So let's roll back.
Okay,
to
let's go back.
The 40s briefly.
Yeah, monounsaturated fatty acids, MUFAs, we call them. And the reason why that's important is because it can raise your good cholesterol, which is called HDL. It can lower the bad cholesterol, which is LDL. You can find it in things like extra virgin olive oil. So whenever you see the words monounsaturated fat or polyunsaturated, the is the good fat.
Key.
Right,
yeah.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, I know, because more people are reading labels these days, which is absolutely a good thing. What I love about your books, and I can say this about just about all of the, the medical, health-related books, is that your advice is doable and simple. It doesn't involve buying a whole lot of stuff that we generally will buy the things that we need or should be eating, and a lot of times it's going bad in the fridge.
I have a rule.
Or it's not being cooked.
My whole career I've had a rule. I write for my mother. Because my mother, right, she has a certain amount of income. She doesn't want to go to 5 different grocery stores. Yeah. She wants to understand what she's eating. She wants to like what she's eating, and she doesn't want a whole bunch of frou-frou. And so the idea is if I can write this for her and she can get it and it can make sense, then a lot of people are going to get it. And I think that's the key to my career, is trying to get people to understand very difficult and complex things and break it down so it's palatable, so it's accessible to them.
Yeah, and also accessible, but also you have the control and the power in your hand. Sometimes it's just a matter of knowing which direction you need to go, because there's so much out there.
I was just working on a new book, and I was just writing an introduction, and in the introduction I say that people do not understand how much control they actually do have of their health destiny. They don't realize it. They resign themselves to high blood pressure because their grandfather had it. Because their grandmother had diabetes, they think they're going to definitely have to have it. People don't realize how much they can control their health destiny if they make minor, not big changes, but minor changes in how they move and how they eat and how they treat their body.
Dr. Ian Smith, the book is fantastic, Eat Your Age, and there is also an official recipe book.
Lots of good recipes
to go along with it. I honestly, I always say this because I'm kind of biased toward you, but you do a great job of breaking it down and making it easy to understand and doable.
I try.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Smith, nice to see you.
You as always.
Thank you for stopping by.
Yes.
We'll be right back. The signature dance series, E-Moves Festival, A Movement, is in full bloom for the Harlem Stage spring season. For more than 25 years, the celebration of dance has showcased world-renowned choreographers, dancers, and musicians of color. Here to tell us more about the lineup, CEO and Artistic Director, Dr. Indira Etwaru. Did I say your name right?
You said it right, Etwaru.
Okay.
Yes. It's
close enough, hopefully.
Close enough. Great to see you.
And you're not the only one I will ask that question, because we got to get it right. 25 years you've been doing this festival? So, and I take it has grown every year.
It has grown every year. I think it is the most exciting playground for dancers and choreographers in all of New York City. Harlem Stage is this incredible dynamic hub for artistic innovation, and the space is so multi-purpose. So it can be the traditional proscenium space, or the seats can go in the round, which means choreographers can imagine the space any way that they want to.
Yeah, and I would take it you'd have people, you started out probably trying to have to sort of convince people to come, and then every year it got a little bit bigger, and then it became the place to showcase.
Absolutely. We had Camille Brown last year, and this year the lineup is extraordinary.
And the B.B. Miller Company.
B.B. Miller Company, she is a pioneer in contemporary dance. In fact, received the Kennedy Center honor for being a master choreographer for African American dance. And she's making her debut at Harlem Stage, which we're really excited about. She's premiering this wonderful piece, Indifferent Forest, which is really looking at the ecology of forest and how human beings interact with that, which is really quite interesting for a choreographer to take on the environment and make it her own.
Well, it's timely.
It's timely for sure.
And I guess in a way it does showcase why arts are so important to the larger society, because they are, in a way, able to get people to think about issues that, that often when you start talking about it, maybe it's contentious.
Right.
It comes at you in a different way if it's
Right.
in some sort of artistic form. Maybe it speaks to you differently.
Isn't that the beauty of art? Is it opens the heart, and before you know it, you're receiving information that, as you said, if it were told to you or written down, there might be some resistance, but art just kind of opens the heart to receive new information. And I don't think there's anything else that brings people together in the way that art does.
No, I mean, there are people that will say it also tears you apart, but the thing is, it gets you thinking, it gets your blood boiling.
That's right.
No matter whether it's visual,
right.
whether it's, auditory,
That's
I guess.
right, absolutely. And it does such a beautiful job of reflecting back to a society, not only what it's great at, but what its challenges are too.
And again, back to that, making you think about
That's
it
right.
and take in something that you might have found less palatable
That's right,
if it had been
for
given to
sure.
you another way. One of the other features that really caught my interest when I was reading about the lineup is this: when we dance, the sun, S-O-N, also
Yes.
rises, black men in dance. Talk to me about that evening that's in the works.
Well, it's sold out just like that, and we have a waiting list for anyone who's interested, but it is Ronald K. Alexander, who danced with Baryshnikov and Rudolf Nureyev in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, one of the first black male dancers in ballet. He partnered with Calvin Royal III, who is a black principal dancer at American Ballet Theater. So you have
the first, or one of the first, one of the few,
one of the
should
few,
say, yeah.
And to see these two generations come together and have a conversation about who to convene for this conversation. We've got 4 of the leading artistic directors of companies on the planet. So Ronald K. Brown from Evidence, Desmond Richardson from Complexions, Matthew Rushing from the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, Robert Garland from Dance Theater of Harlem.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like the embarrassment of riches. These are incredibly future forward artistic directors, but they've also spent their life on helping audiences understand the beauty and majesty of the African American experience.
And why it is such an important component of the American
experience. And I don't think it should be lost on audiences that the conversation is happening 1 week following the 5th anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. Because black men as artists, they go onto the stage and they're beautiful and they're bigger than life. And then they put on their everyday clothes and they go out into a world that's still, tackling some of the racial inequities that are a part of our mainstream society. So to be able to have that conversation and put 6 incredibly brilliant men on the stage, I think is just going to be wonderful.
So, this festival, eMoves, it's a must-see. And I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm thinking, so is it a must-see? Well, look, it's brilliant talent, performances that you will see you don't see anywhere else. But is it geared toward those of us who know less about dance, or is you already said that conversation was sold out. Is it people who are already in the arts that are flocking to see all this because they actually know just how special it is? Or is it a mix?
I think it's a mix. I think we're getting audiences who love and trust that Harlem Stage is always going to bring them something adventurous. I think it's definitely the dance community, but we're also getting people who are just curious, who want to figure out, like, what is Eiko Atake and Don Christensen, this amazing Japanese interdisciplinary artist, and Don Christian Jones. They're bringing together this idea of the body as memory and bodies of water as memory, and bringing those two things together for this world premiere called Soak. And water is involved. I will say that.
Yeah, is that involved in the audience? Or just,
not in the audience. So you will stay.
Am I going to
stay
get wet?
You will stay dry, but the artists are really playing with water as this fundamental element, and it's really quite riveting.
So it sounds, you're sucking me in.
Good.
even if you're not going to be soaking me. So the festival runs when does it start? The first day of the festival?
It starts this Thursday with B.B. Miller, and it goes through the first weekend in June. So, and all the dates and tickets are on sale.
And they're on harlemstage.org.
Correct.
You can find out all the information there.
Yes.
And you need to do it now because it's going to be sold out if you don't do it now.
Exactly.
But that's a great problem to have.
It's a wonderful problem to have.
And have you already started planning for next year?
We've started planning for next year. We're taking a look at the world and we're asking ourselves, what do we need to be talking about with our audiences?
Oh, yeah. That's a
There's
long
a lot to
conversation.
talk about.
A lot. harlemstage.org, the E-Moves Festival, 25 years. If you've been around that long, you're doing something right.
It's a blessing. Yeah.
Thank you so much
Thank you so
for talking
much.
with us
Such
today.
a pleasure.
We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us on Here and Now. If you missed any portion of today's show, you can watch at abc7ny.com/hereandnow or listen to our podcast wherever you subscribe. If you'd like to comment or share your story, email us at hereandnow@wabc.com or follow us on Facebook and Instagram. I'm Sandra Bookman. Enjoy the rest of your day.